Anti-Semitism has been called the world's oldest hatred since the October 7th attack on Israel. Incidents of hatred for the Jewish people have exploded worldwide, especially on college campuses.
From the river to the sea.
A recent poll of Jewish college students found that 83% have experienced or witnessed some form of anti-Semitism since October 7th. 1 in 4 have had to take security precautions. In his new book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew?, author, filmmaker, and Rabbi Raphael Shore invites readers to explore this hatred from the anti-Semite's point of view, starting with Hitler and following through to modern-day extremists. He finds that Jews are not persecuted because they're bad, but because they're good and have transformed and strengthened societies. Shore is also the producer of Tragic Awakening, a film which delves into the roots of Jew hatred through the insights of a former anti-Semite, offering disturbing revelations about the world's oldest hatred.
Rabbi Raphael Shore joins us now. Welcome to the 700 Club.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Happy to have you. You're known for your documentaries and films especially, but now this new book with a very compelling title, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Why this book now?
Well, I started to write it 4 years ago, and it was very timely at any time in history because the Jews have been persecuted for 3,000 years. I did not write it 20 years ago because I didn't feel the world was ready to hear it. After October 7th, everybody is asking the question, and what I'm doing in the book is challenging conventional wisdom on why there is so much Jew hatred, because we have been delivered a superficial and actually incorrect explanation for the nature of Jew hatred.
New film, Tragic Awakening, as well, timely. But you actually, while there's so much discouragement in the Jewish community, you're saying there could be some optimism here. Like, you're painting a bright picture in some ways, too. How do you do that?
Well, exactly. I call it an inspirational look at anti-Semitism, which is provocative and bizarre on the surface. But the idea is that evil always comes for the Jews first. We're the canary in the coal mine. So why is it? Why is it that Jews are always targeted? Why is it that we're always relevant? Why is it that there's so much obsession and focus on the Jewish people? So I flip anti-Semitism on its head and say, you know what? It's because we're relevant. It's because what we are doing, what we've been doing, really makes a difference in the world. And if we understand that the anti-Semites are actually going after us because we're actually bringing a positive message into the world and making a positive difference, and it's a reaction to that, then we can flip it and realize it's actually something very positive about being Jewish and the values, the Judeo-Christian values that we are helping to bring into the world that is causing the reaction. So you can be very positive about how that relates to our identity.
Some of your most fascinating chapters are in regard to Hitler and why he hated the Jews. So you get into his mindset. I'd like you to explain that. Even at the perils of his own army, where he would focus so much on eliminating Jews that his soldiers needed support, and he abandoned them. What was his obsession?
Hitler met the Mufti of Jerusalem, the leader of the Palestinian National Movement, in 1941, and he told the Islamic leader, put this into your heart. The real war of World War II is not the battle on the military fields, but it's an ideological battle between the Jews and the Germans. What he was saying was that you've got Judeo-Christian values on the one side, and you've got might makes right, survival of the fittest on the other side. And he was trying to bring the world back to the primitive values of the pagan days. And I expose Hitler's ideology. It's sad that it hasn't been realized, but in the book I go deep into it, and he was clear. We've been brainwashed to think that Hitler was just a madman, and of course he was evil, but that he had no coherent thoughts. In fact, he had a very consistent ideology that he was fighting an ideological war against the Jews. The Jews had to be eliminated because we were bringing humanitarianism, ethical monotheism, God into the world, and he was fighting that. And that's why it's relevant. This book is relevant for everybody who cares about seeing a better world.
You've studied anti-Semitism for years.
Yes.
Is the culture we're living in now and what's going on in the Middle East and in Israel, is it more the same or is it different in some ways? What about the crisis now compared to history?
It's just another chapter. That's how I look at it. You know, we say in our Passover Seder, the Jewish people, every year, we say in every generation, somebody comes up to rise against us to wipe us out. So the radical Islamists today are the inheritors of Nazism. As I said, Mufti was there in 1941, spent the years in the war. They slipped away after the defeat of Nazi Germany, and they've been fighting the Jewish people in Israel the same way Hitler did for the last 80, 90 years. There's nothing new about this battle. That's what I'm showing in the book. This is a battle of civilization. The battle of against anti-Semitism is a battle of ideologies. Which side are you on in history? The Judeo-Christian values, trying to make the world higher, uplifted, more spiritual and dignified place, or are we heading back to the animal world? And so the Jews are always at the center stage of this historical battle. Today it's against the radical Islamists. It's too bad that not everybody doesn't realize that and realize that Hamas is ISIS. That would be helpful if we had the moral support. But we do appreciate that most of the American Christian community is very much behind us and has our backs at this fight, because this fight is also the American battle. We're there in the front lines.
Can I touch on your personal journey? Your book begins with when you kind of had a wake-up call, I guess you could say. College age, right? I mean, I don't know high school. I don't know how important it was for you at that time to be Jewish, but what happened that woke you up a little bit?
Well, I grew up in Canada. I live in Israel now, but I grew up in London, Ontario, Canada, and I was hanging out with mostly non-Jews, and we were getting along with everybody just fine. Jewish identity was important for me, but not really core to my life. I certainly wasn't religious. I didn't have much of an education in Judaism. And we thought we were part of the cool group until one night, Friday night, the party, they hung out a sign, locked the doors, and said, "No Jews allowed." And these were our friends. And that was shocking to my friend, my close friend that always said, there is anti-Semitism. Our friends harbor anti-Semitic thoughts. And I thought, no, don't be ridiculous, you're paranoid. But then it came out and said, oh boy, it's real. And this is the same kind of wake-up call that almost every Jew on American campuses and in America around the world have felt after October 7th. It wasn't just the attack on October 7th that tried to wipe us out, but the response of the world, the anti-Semitic response on campuses and everything. So it's been a wake-up to me. It started me thinking about what does it mean to be Jewish, and that got me rolling.
Just a few days after October 7th, on college campuses and in this country, people turned on Israel. Did that surprise you so quickly?
It surprised me to the extent that it was, but we who have backgrounds in Jewish history did not expect that we would have the moral support of the world for very long. We figured maybe a week. It surprised us because it was only 2 days, and the reaction against Israel began even before Israel started a military response. The support for Hamas on campuses. So the fact that it happened, the fact that we didn't have people's support, that was surprising. I have a nephew who was at NYU. He was traumatized. All of his professors, all of his co-students just turned on him. And it was like, what is going on? I mean, these are Jewish students who aren't involved with Israel, not religious. They're just Jewish students on campus. And all of a sudden, everybody's going after them because of what's happening 5,000 miles away. So it was an interesting wake-up call. Not too surprising if you're a student in history, because, as I said, this is an ongoing battle.
How do we combat anti-Semitism for Jewish people and then for, say, Christians? How do we combat it?
Well, that's the core message of my book, The Inspiring Response. You see, if we understand the deep reason for anti-Semitism, we understand it's a spiritual phenomenon. It's a moral and spiritual phenomenon. It's not a political or economic phenomenon. And if we understand that, then the way to fight back is morally and spiritually. So therefore, to the extent that Jewish students, Jewish people reconnect to who they are as Jews, that is the best way to fight back. And the non-Jewish world get on the right side of history, stand up for Judeo-Christian values. This is what the war is about. And ultimately, we will be successful. Well, we know we're going to be successful. Everything's been called in advance in the Torah. And interesting, the Bible's explanation for anti-Semitism is the same as Adolf Hitler's. So we know that in the end, this is a war against God, against Judaism, against ethical monotheism, and we know who's going to win in the end. We're still here after 3,000 plus years, so we can be very positive and optimistic, and I'm encouraging Jews to get the inner armor to stand up to the anti-Semitism and have the moral self-confidence. And I think that's true for Jews and non-Jews alike.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't tell, this is a fascinating book. It's called Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? It's available nationwide. And to find out how to watch the Rabbi's new film, Tragic Awakening, go to cbnnews.com. Rabbi, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.